Raidieraksts Drošinātājs.
It's very nice to have you in our podcast, Anastasija. What we would like to ask you is please tell us about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Well, hello. It's a great pleasure for me to be here as well. My name is Anastasija Vereščinska. I'm the Partnerships Manager at the Energy for Ukraine Foundation. It's a Ukrainian charity that equips schools and hospitals with solar systems during the war. I am working with donors. I am looking for them, maintaining the relations with them, deciding what is the best option for them to participate in our project, because we have several options in terms of the donor participation in our project. Basically maintaining the relations with them.
International donors or local or both?
Mainly our donors are businesses, sometimes renewable businesses that are working in Europe. These are like the renewable companies, for example, distributors of renewable equipment, or sometimes producers of renewable equipment, or the energy companies that have the CSR programs that are in line with key focuses of our project. For example, there's education on sustainability, because we're doing the projects at schools, and we are launching also a educational course at the schools where we install solar systems. And public health, for example, because at the hospitals we are focusing on equipping the critical equipment of the life-saving equipment, basically at the surgery rooms, at the ICU rooms. There are lots of different opportunities for companies to participate either in equipment or financially, but also with some of their capacity. For example, we were offered by some companies to provide some educational materials that they have already developed for the educational course for kids, but in Europe. So I'm working on all of these topics, trying to figure out what would be the best solution for the particular company. But also we are exploring the grant opportunities. So I'm also frequently engaged, especially now, with different grant institutions in negotiations, in exploring the options that we can benefit from in terms of receiving grants from foreign governments. For example, Germany, they are doing actually a lot in terms of financing projects of the green reconstruction of Ukraine, because our projects are already in line with these efforts. And just right now, I came back from the advocacy trip in the US, where I was meeting different US stakeholders in the government, at the non-governmental sector, in business, and together with other NGOs and 2 Ukrainian mayors. We were actually shaping our discussions like that we are discussing the efforts that are already here in Ukraine in terms of sustainable reconstruction on the level of the municipalities. And we are highlighting also the efforts of the non-governmental institutions, for example, like we are just a charity, but we stepped in and decided to equip schools and hospitals, which are social and critical infrastructure, with solar solutions that are helping them to work through blackouts. But also it's a long-term solution in comparison to the diesel or petroleum generators that are, in most cases, are being used as very short-term solution.
So how about you? You have a special connection to Riga, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes. I did a very short-term, I would say, program in Latvian University in RGSL. That was advanced program in European law and economics. And that was organized for Ukrainian civil servants and people who are working in the governmental area, let's say, and for the people who are working in NGO sector as well. And I was participating in this program while I was working at Ukrainian Parliament. I was working at the Energy Committee of Ukrainian Parliament, being as an assistant to the member of the Parliament, of Ukrainian Parliament in 2018, I suppose. Yeah. So I spent 3 months in Riga I was there during probably the most amazing weather conditions that are available there. So that was super cool. I've enjoyed this experience both professionally and personally.
So, somebody who knows us. Anyway, how did you start to deal with energy questions?
That was actually a very spontaneous, in a way, decision because I was studying law at Ukrainian university and I started working as a lawyer. So I was working at one legal firm and then at the Big Four. I was doing legal due diligence, all this stuff, classic corporate law. And at this point, like sustainability and all of this interest towards energy, renewable energy, it was just my hobby, let's say. I was participating in some discussions regarding like waste management or participating in social responsibility activities of my company at that time that were related to environment, let's say. But that was like super far from what I'm doing now. But for me, I decided that that's how it all connected because at the point when I was leading this company, I was, okay, I probably don't really want to proceed going like in a way of classic corporate law because at that point I felt that it's super boring.
I agree.
I needed something like interesting, inspiring, whatever you say. And I just sat down and asked myself, okay, during these 2 years, when I was working at this company, what was like the at least close to this like excitement and being interesting? And that was a project with Ukrainian Ministry of Energy not on the renewables. That was on the very traditional issues of the extraction of coal and other natural resources in Ukraine. And I was like, okay, that was interesting. So maybe I will just explore it a little bit deeper. And I started talking to my friends and saying that, okay, guys, I want to work in energy now. And it worked because at some point, my efforts of just sharing this information to different stakeholders among my friends, it paid off. And one of my friends who was working at the parliament said, okay, I know this member of parliament who is looking for this. And he is very progressive. He's all pro renewables, green transition, climate. And I thought that that's a perfect opportunity to just know more about the sector and how it works in Ukraine, starting from policy level. And that's actually how it all started. I applied, I was successful and in my application, and I started working in the parliament. That was like 2 years before premature end of this session of parliament. From that point, I was looking for jobs in the sector because during this time I have learned how things work, who are the key players. That's actually how it started, and I'm really glad that I've made that decision.
How did you end up in this project, the current project?
I had several projects and jobs before. I worked for some time at a Ukrainian association, one of the leading associations in renewable energy. Basically, it's a group of operators and developers of renewable systems in Ukraine. And during that time, it was quite a complicated period for them because there were some unpleasant policy changes in Ukraine related to retrospective decrease of the feed-in tariff. So you could imagine they were significantly affected by that. And in terms of communication, we were working very hard with the Ukrainian government in order to negotiate at least somehow, because that came as a surprise for everybody. So I was working with this association, and then I started working at the German think tank, Berlin Economics. They have launched a project on high-level policy advice in Ukraine on the issues of decarbonization, renewables, electricity market. And actually, electricity market was the main topic that I was working with during this project. The project was called Low Carbon Ukraine. It exists still. It's financed by the German government, and that was actually pretty successful through the years. At that point, we had to really motivated team, and we were working for a year, I think, on monitoring of the electricity market. It may sound a little bit boring, but it was the moment when the electricity market was just launched in Ukraine in the new model. So it was a groundbreaking thing, and in a way it was extremely interesting to follow how it unfolds for many reasons, because it was launched in a pre-baked state, and so we were doing the monitoring of this process, and in parallel we are also monitoring other policy developments in decarbonization, in renewables, and that's actually how I spent several years with this project. Yeah, so, and then it was the start of COVID. I proceeded working with them, but also had some side projects with Ukrainian think tank, also doing some policy analysis and policy consulting works in issues related to climate, especially during the COVID. It was very important to analyze how does the pandemic affects and the policy developments and the markets and so on. Because when the war started, full-scale war started, that was nothing comparable even to the consequences of pandemic. But anyway, so between my current project and then I had some contracts with Ukrainian think tanks, one Polish think tank, and the German one. And when it was 2022, actually after the start of the full-scale invasion, I've ended my contract, and I was looking for something that would be more fulfilling, and that is actually how I found the foundation. That was very, very accidental meeting of the founder, Juliana, and we had just small conversation during the meeting at the cafe with other people where we have met, and the same evening we were already discussing how we can work together. I started working at the foundation in September 2022, and the organization was established in April the same year. So at that point, they were already developing the first project at the Irpin school. Well, here now constructing solar plants for schools and hospitals.
Okay. How does that foundation work? Because what we see in a homepage, it's projects, solar projects mostly, or very close to it. You collect donations. Tell us a little bit more. How does that work, everything?
So, yeah, when the foundation was established, we focused from the very beginning on the energy help. We have currently 3 campaigns. 2 of them focusing on schools and hospitals, and these are 100 renewables for schools and 50 renewables for hospitals, meaning that we want to equip 150 facilities within 5 years. Another campaign, it's on a rolling basis where we procure or receive as a donation the portable energy equipment, and that could be portable storages, portable lanterns, power banks, other energy equipment that could be helpful in different regions of Ukraine. We are focusing on civilians or civilian services, for example, the rescuers that are arriving they are arriving the first to the sites of the missile attack, for example, and they constantly need some power supply to keep running all of their equipment as well. So it's a campaign where we procure some portable solutions. They are usually with a renewable element. So, for example, we were providing the lanterns with the small solar modules, and these are quite useful, especially during the blackouts. Of course, winter is not the best time for charging solar modules, but they have very small energy demand. Even that can be covered by the electricity generated during the winter. These are our three main campaigns within which we are gathering donations, gathering equipment, but as I've said, I'm working with different donors. And I would say that our fundraising, it mainly happens in the negotiations, not raising funds online, for example. We tested different options how to do that, and we realized that direct communication with the donors was the best. And that's why we are investing a lot of our time and resources in order to bring us together with different companies that are either willing potentially to participate in the projects, or they don't know that they are willing to participate, but then they meet us and we kind of present what we do, and they understand that that's important. We have some spare resources that we could share, but also what's more interesting in terms of working this business for the charity projects, and that's what I actually discovered during this year, that for companies, that is also an opportunity to get to know the market better, Ukrainian market, I mean, because we have one Polish company that started doing solar projects with us, but they were also thinking about entering the Ukrainian market. And while we were doing solar projects together, at schools and hospitals, they have opened a branch in Ukraine, and they have started working on the Ukrainian market during the full-scale invasion this year.
You are very good in selling the idea.
I hope so. That's how we are trying to find, we're trying to think as business would in this case, and we understand that, well, charity, it all sounds good, but you cannot do that in long term. So there should be significant benefits, not for the schools and hospitals that we do, but also for those who participate in the project. Mainly, if that is business, so for business. And their interests, they are usually lying somewhere near getting profits. So that's why we are trying to explore these avenues for cooperation, and so far it works like this.
And why not? Tell us about those schools, those hospitals, those other, like field hospitals and other projects. What are the results? What have you done? How does that work? Because this will be a special part of our conversation, because this is where it all sums up, I guess.
Mm-hmm. How we look for them. It all started with just a field trip to Irpin when it was deoccupied in April 2022. When it was safe to go there, the team, I wasn't part of the team then, so the founder and our project manager, as of now, they visited this deoccupied city that was significantly damaged, and they have visited several educational facilities there, mainly schools. When they arrived there, when they were filming the damages that schools have sustained, because in Irpin, for example, there was one school that was completely destroyed, to the ground, and there were several schools that had some significant damage, but they managed to rebuild the building itself during several months in order to welcome kids already in September. So it was in April, the occupation, and they had to do all of the demining activities, obviously, to remove all of their missiles that were there. That is huge work. And after that, the repairment could start. And in Kyiv region, for example, it was a big help from different international institutions. For example, UN projects were supporting the schools doing the whole repairment and equipping their bomb shelters. And within this work, they could repair the roof. And for us, that was the significant help, because we had the opportunity. We had a new roof that could be perfect for installation of the solar system on it. So in Kyiv region, it was different. It was very emotional. So that's how it started. But then we understood that, that may be not really sustainable to go to every region, just to explore, because that would take a lot of time, a lot of efforts, a lot of funds also. So we have started working with ministries of education of Ukraine and Ministry of Health. So we are providing them with our criteria for selection of the facilities, and they are providing us the list of the facilities that they would recommend. So that's how it works. We are not obliged to do the project at every facility that they recommend. So we are doing the technical research after that. So they are like applying for this project, but we are asking them to provide all the technical data on the facility, because we need the pictures of the roof, for example. We need the estimate of their consumption for the previous periods. So we would use this information when we are preparing the technical solution for this particular school or hospital. That is also a big part of work that is just on the preparatory stage for the project. We do that a long time before we start talking to donors, because to donors we are coming already with the technical solution, with the sometimes with the even technical documentation for the project. We are sure that this offered solution, this capacity would be good for this facility. We know how much money would we need to do that, and it's your call just to give the funds or give the equipment, and we would start the project right away.
How many schools have roofs with solar panels, or hospitals? How would you characterize the size of it? What's done already?
What we have done, yeah. So we have done 2 schools, one in Irpin, one in Chernihiv city. Irpin probably is more famous now, unfortunately, due to all the horrible things that we and the world have seen after the occupation. And Chernihiv, it's a city in northern Ukraine, regional center. It was kind of encircled. Our first hospital project was there at the children's hospital, the building of the neonatal department. So that is where the prematurely born kids are being treated. And as you may know, this process requires a lot of equipment, like these boxes where kids are
kept.
Yes, and also the surgery rooms and so on. So we have installed the solar system at this separate building of this hospital. Probably I haven't covered that, but that may be important. We are not covering the whole consumption of the facilities. So at schools, we are aiming to cover up to 30% of their consumption. So it's not our equipment that we install. It does not cover, and it does not aim to cover all their consumption that the school has. For example, they may have the huge consumption of the kitchen, but we are not covering that because we want to provide them an opportunity to work up to 4 hours during the blackout with the critical equipment. For example, for the school, it may be the bomb shelter, because the kids, if the air alert goes on, they proceed to the bomb shelter, and if it's longer than, I don't know, half an hour, the kids may start with their lessons. So if they have the facilities to do so, and we are trying to provide them at least electricity to do so they would not be sitting there with flashlights of their phones, but they at least would have proper lighting. Maybe they could power any interactive like desks or something that would allow them to proceed with their studies, because that's what we saw usually happens. So, and at the hospitals, the situation technically is a little bit more complicated, because there we are focusing not on the general share of their consumption, but on covering the consumption of the critical equipment that would be needed for at least 3 hours. 3 hours, that is the average length of the surgery, for example. And we were aiming to provide them at least 3 hours of uninterrupted power supply to the critical equipment at the surgery rooms or at the intensive care units if needed. So we would not at least lose people because we don't have the electricity, because unfortunately we're losing people like on a daily basis, and we don't want to lose even more when there is no access to electricity. What we have already saw, we have very inspiring insight from the headmaster of our first facility, Irpin School, where the system is already working for a year. He has applied very strict electricity consumption rules at the facility. And when we were installing the system, we were aiming it to cover their consumption for like 4 hours. But with the rules on consumption, and like he is checking who is using the kettle, and there is only one kettle at the school, because all the heating facilities, they are consuming much more electricity. So he imposed rules on using the kettles, boilers for heating the water, and that's how he managed to do from 4 hours to 8.
Wow.
And they have already changed the lighting to more energy efficient one. That's how he actually managed to increase the number of hours that are available for the school to proceed working in complete blackout.
So there are solar panels plus the storage, that like a power bank that stores it, so you can use it for a longer time when it's fully charged.
Yes, and it can be charged both from the grid when the electricity is available and from the solar modules, obviously. That is a hybrid solution that allows to have the reserved electricity all the time for their needs during the complete blackout. But if there is no blackout, they are just consuming the electricity primarily from the solar modules, and then when there is no available electricity generated from the solar modules, they are taking this share from the grid. So they are decreasing their consumption of the grid electricity. That's how they are saving on the energy bills. And for the average school, this saving could be up to 2,050 euros with current Ukrainian tariffs per year. And for the hospital, that is about 5,000 because they have bigger capacities.
We are expecting the winter, the hard winter. We know what Russians do. They bomb the critical infrastructure, including the places where electricity is whether made or distributed. At that case, when electricity is off, stops everything. I mean, the canalization, the heating, water flow, many things and everything, especially in the cities. So how does that project work with this? Can a hospital function for those several hours and have both like heating where it's most necessary, water where and when it's most necessary, air ventilation and stuff? Or is it just for much more critical stuff?
It's only for the critical stuff, because we cannot help, at least now, with the water supply and with the heating. These are more energy consuming processes, I would say, and in our projects we are not focusing on them. I would really want to, but it would significantly increase the cost of our projects. And that is like a significant bottleneck, because we want to install as many solar systems as possible. Of course, like we have the aim in 150 facilities, but we want to do that, at least that, very quickly, because we understand that, okay, last winter was harsh, this winter will be hard as well, but Ukrainian energy system, even without attacks, let's imagine somehow Russians stop attacking Ukrainian infrastructure, our energy system will not recover miraculously fast. And we see already that there are so many issues technical with that. We were using very old equipment, like very old these transformators, very old equipment for the generating facilities on traditional generation. And that's how it's very hard for Ukrainian authorities even find the details to fix everything that was damaged. And obviously Russians know that, and that makes us very vulnerable. And that's why in our projects we are on more higher level, we are focusing on making Ukrainian energy system more decentralized, because it makes it less vulnerable against the attacks. Because if Russians attack one thermal power plant, for example, that is very powerful and that is working to power several regions or several cities. If something happens with one this generating facility, several cities go in blackout. But if every city and ideally every hospital, school, water supply company, you name it, have their own generation of electricity, that provides them incredible resilience and energy independence.
How would you say, how does the war affect the thinking in Ukraine on renewable resources of electricity, energy? Does it make the branch develop much faster, actually, or also stops it in a way because of many other very serious problems?
Renewables have never been so popular as they have become within the course of last year. People are installing renewable systems, both actually, mainly solar, but they are focusing also on storage as well for obvious reasons. But people are, of course, it's more expensive in short term than a generator, but in long term, there is this thing with Ukrainian tariffs, because I wanted to start talking about that. That may be a little bit deeper than, I'm not sure whether you want to go there, but Ukraine has heavily subsidized electricity price for households. So that's why there are very little incentives for the households to install renewable systems, because that will not provide that level of saving on energy bills as it's, for example, anywhere in Europe. Because Ukrainian price for the households is very low. So it's more economically efficient for person living in a private house or living in the multi-store building just to consume electricity from the grid. And they don't even have the incentives to save it, actually. Like, just turn off the light when you don't need that, because that's very cheap. And so that's why renewables for households before the invasion, they were popular, but only people who have like enough resources to cover their basic needs, let's say, could afford that. Mainly these were people at the private houses, and they were doing that because they have like some climate sentiment or something, or they were receiving their feed-in tariff. The feed-in tariff is another story, and that allows you to actually earn money. And when the feed-in tariff was implemented, it was very high, and that's why it made a lot of sense for both business and households to install such systems, just to earn money. And that was for all of them, that was just an opportunity to earn more. And the payback period was very good, so a lot of systems were installed. But currently, when we have this serious issue of energy dependence and the blackouts, people started installing the systems just to cover their needs without all this feed-in tariff and everything. They're installing the systems for self-consumption. That's what actually we do at the schools and hospitals. They do not have the possibility to sell the electricity to the grid. That's what a lot of people in the residential sector are doing as well. But again, it's still very expensive. Like in the course of several years, for example, when they were only introduced, they were super expensive. But now the price has significantly decreased. So when we are analyzing it in like historical perspective, solar modules are very cheap. But the main part of the cost in our projects, not solar modules, but the storage. And the storage is it's a big problem. It's very expensive, but it provides like the essence of our project. So that's why we are installing only hybrid solar systems, solar modules plus storage.
What we see is that Russia at this point is not on the way to finish attacking Ukraine. How do you see the coming winter? How would it look like? Because people are kind of, I would say, more ready. They have experience. They had the whole summer to prepare. How do you see that? How will be that winter? And will it be different from the previous one if we assume that Russia will be the same evil as it was?
Unfortunately, I think that this winter may be even harder. Because last winter, surprisingly enough, it went, I can't say well, because I can't say like with all the moral issues, I can't say that it went well. But we had blackouts for several hours, sometimes days. But probably everybody expected that it would be much worse. And this winter, yes, we are better prepared. But the energy system is not even in that shape as it was before attacks. And for me, that is the main problem. Because, of course, a lot was done in order to recover after the attacks. But obviously, it's not 100% done. That's why I think that maybe even this year, Russians may start attacking something different, maybe not the transmission, but already the generation. And they have started doing so because last year they were attacking mainly the transmission points. And this year they have already started attacking the thermal generation capacities. Well, obviously, last year they were doing so, but as we see from the news, for example, now they are proceeding to do so. So we will see how it goes. I really hope that all the efforts that were done through the course of this year in terms of providing generators, solar systems, thank God we are not the only ones who are doing that. So there are already maybe dozens of solar systems that are installed at schools, hospitals, water facilities. And that's why it would be easier both to these facilities to go through the blackouts and for the energy system, because they would not need to worry to cover the basic consumption of these facilities. For example, I know a very good story from Ukrainian city Zhytomyr. There is a very proactive mayor who has been working with different donors, private sector, and they have equipped several facilities in the city with solar systems or any other renewable systems. And during last year, when they were receiving the information from Ukrainian grid manager that, guys, we need to impose power outages in a city. And they were like, okay, we will reduce the consumption. And they were just shifting the consumption at their water facilities, hospitals, schools, for example, from the grid to the renewable systems that they have installed. And that's how they managed to avoid power outages at the residential sector. So people did not even feel that. But that was a very efficient management from the city administration. And that's actually what energy independence means, because in our heavily centralized energy system, such things as deciding from which source of energy you would be taking electricity is not always the case. So in this city, they have the options. And basically, that is the whole story behind energy independence. You need to have options to be resilient.
So let's say diversification, decentralization, and saving. These things work really well.
Yes.
What would you say that are the main things that we should learn from you and that you will be happy we take from you?
I would say that in comparison to Western Europe, you understand our context a little bit better, just because you are also neighboring with Russia. And in terms of energy, from what I know, all of the Baltic states are doing a lot in terms of energy independence and cutting any dependence from Russian gas, from Russian electricity. That is very important because we even now are still having like this instrument for pressure on us through transit of Russian gas. Obviously, we are not importing that, but we are still in these relations in terms of transit. Obviously, I would say that renewables are the key for energy independence, just because for the reasons that you mentioned, decentralization and diversification, and they are allowing to reach that. That provides you the options, as I've said. That is amazing, because if something happens, at least you would have several hours with the connection, with charged devices that may allow you to do so like for several days with recharging and everything. So that is very important. But in terms of, I wouldn't be saying like on the global political level, what can Latvia, for example, do with your energy system? That is totally your thing. I'm just saying that renewables are just better in the long term because we all have these climate targets, and that is another problem that will stay with us even when Russia somehow disappears. So we will have to fight with that as well in the future. So it's better to start as quickly as possible while cutting the profits of Russians.
Okay. I hope some people in Latvia as well heard of what you were telling about your Energy Act, the project, and maybe you'll get a call.
I hope so, because actually we didn't have a lot of cooperation with the companies from Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. That is surprisingly, but I'm trying to find the ways to connect and maybe to work on the project. But I know that you guys are providing so much energy help and humanitarian help, so that could be the reason as well. But if you know somebody who would be interested, just let me know. I would be happy to talk and do all the stuff that I do every day.
Okay, let's hope there'll be a reason for you to come to Riga and to talk with people here and explain things. So the question we ask always at the end of our conversation, because it has come, is what would you like that anybody would wish you personally, and in this case also to the organization you work for? What should we wish you?
Well, yes, victory of Ukraine and doing everything you can to help us to reach that as fast as possible would be the best you could wish, the best I could wish, definitely. But I know that with the victory, I will not stop doing what I do, because there would be so much more to be done with all that extraction and all the stuff. So I would wish myself, good health, because it will take a lot of efforts. But also I would really wish that the attention to what is happening in Ukraine would remain at least on the same level as it is now, because we see that people are getting tired, and that is totally understandable. But we are here fighting for the better future for all of us. Now, it's not something that is very hard to imagine, because we all saw what Russians could do when they invade another country. And that is scary. And nobody wants to experience that. And we want to end it now as quickly as possible. So Russians would not be able to do that with any of you, any of us, and anybody in the world.
I'm very thankful for what you told us. Despite we kind of heard of it quite a lot, this makes it more close.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Raidieraksts Drošinātājs.